to save his son. What he did shocked everyone. The crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across the marble floor of Le Bernardin, Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant, where a single meal cost more than most people made in a week. "Table 7 needs their wine refilled," her supervisor Janet whispered as she passed. "And Tasha?" Smile. These people can smell desperation. Tasha forced her lips into the practiced curve she'd perfected. Warm, but not too friendly. Professional, but not cold. Table 7. The billionaire with the sad little boy who barely touched his food. She'd been watching them all evening, this mismatched pair. Marcus Blackstone, the tech mogul whose company had revolutionized cloud computing, sat rigidly upright, his phone perpetually pressed to his ear. Across from him, 6-year-old Oliver picked at his truffle pasta, his usually bright green eyes dulled by something Tasha couldn't quite identify. "More wine, Mr. Blackstone?" she asked, approaching with the Chateau Margaux that cost $800 a bottle. Marcus held up one finger without looking at her, continuing his conversation. "No, the Jakarta servers can't go down. I don't care if it's midnight there." Oliver's small voice cut through his father's words. "Daddy, my throat feels funny." "Not now, Oliver," Marcus muttered, covering the phone. "Daddy's working." Tasha felt something twist in her chest as she watched the little boy's face crumple. She'd seen that look before, the desperate need for a parent's attention, the slow resignation when it didn't come. She knew it intimately. "The chocolate soufflé is ready for your table," she said gently, placing the dessert in front of Oliver with extra care. His face brightened for the first time all evening. "Is this the kind with the nuts?" Oliver asked, his voice slightly hoarse. Tasha paused, wine bottle still in hand. Something in his voice, a raspiness that hadn't been there before, made her look closer. "There are almonds in the almond praline center, sweetheart. Why do you ask?" But Oliver had already taken a large bite, his eyes lighting up with childish delight. "It's really good." Marcus finally ended his call, glancing at his Patek Philippe. "Oliver, eat up." "We need to leave in 10 minutes. I have another call with Singapore." That's when Tasha saw it, the slight puffiness around Oliver's eyes, the way he scratched at his neck between bites. She'd worked enough family shifts to recognize the signs. "Oliver," she said, kneeling beside his chair. "Honey, do you have any food allergies?" The boy nodded, still chewing. "I'm allergic to nuts, but this doesn't taste like nuts." Time slowed to a crawl. The ambient noise of the restaurant faded to nothing as Tasha watched Oliver take another bite, then another. His breathing was becoming labored, and red welts were beginning to appear on his neck. "Sir?" Tasha's voice cut through Marcus's attempt to dial another number. "Your son! He's having an allergic reaction!" Marcus barely glanced up. "He's fine. Kids get rashes all the time. Oliver, stop scratching yourself." But Oliver wasn't listening. His small hands had moved to his throat, and his eyes were wide with confusion and growing fear. "Daddy, I can't breathe." The words came out as barely a whisper, but Tasha heard them. She'd heard them before, in a voice that still haunted her dreams. A voice belonging to a little boy who had looked just like Oliver, with the same scared eyes and the same desperate need for air that wouldn't come. "Call 911!" Tasha shouted to the maitre d', but even as she said it, she knew it would be too late. Oliver's lips were turning blue around the edges, his breathing coming in short, shallow gasps. Anaphylactic shock was setting in fast, faster than any ambulance could arrive. Marcus finally looked up from his phone, annoyance creasing his features. "What are you—" His words died as he saw his son's face. "Oliver? Oliver." But Tasha was already moving. Without permission, without thought, she scooped Oliver into her arms. His small body felt frighteningly light, and she could feel his heart racing against her chest like a trapped bird. "I'm taking him to the hospital," she announced, turning toward the door. "Put him down!" Marcus stood, his chair clattering backward. "You can't just—" "Your son is dying," Tasha said, her voice cutting through his protests with surgical precision. "Every second counts. You can either come with me or follow behind, but I'm not letting another child die because someone was too proud to act." She was already pushing through the restaurant's heavy glass doors, Oliver growing more limp in her arms with each passing second. The valet stand was empty, but there, gleaming under the streetlights like a golden beacon, sat Marcus Blackstone's Lamborghini Huracan. The keys were still in the ignition, a testament to the kind of privilege that never imagined consequences. "Lord, please forgive me," Tasha whispered, settling Oliver into the passenger seat before sliding behind the wheel. The engine roared to life with a sound like controlled thunder. Through the restaurant's windows, she could see Marcus Blackstone's face, his mouth open in shock and fury. He was shouting something, probably threats, but Tasha couldn't hear him over the engine, and Oliver's increasingly desperate gasps for air. She threw the car into drive and pressed the accelerator to the floor. The Lamborghini shot into traffic like a bullet, its advanced traction control the only thing keeping it from spinning out as Tasha navigated the maze of Manhattan streets. She'd never driven anything like this. Her own car was a 15-year-old Honda Civic that barely made it through inspection each year, but desperation made her bold. "Stay with me, baby. I'm not gonna let what happened to my son happen to you," she murmured to Oliver, one hand on the wheel, the other reaching over to feel his forehead. He was burning up, his small chest rising and falling in rapid, shallow movements. "We're almost there." Behind them, car horns blared as she weaved through traffic, running red lights with the precision of someone who had nothing left to lose. The city blurred past in streaks of neon and shadow, but all Tasha could focus on was the sound of Oliver's breathing, or the terrifying lack thereof. Her phone buzzed insistently from where she'd dropped it in the cup holder. Probably Marcus Blackstone, probably threatening to have her arrested. Let him. She'd been threatened by worse people for less important reasons. "Mommy used to take me to the hospital when I got sick," Oliver whispered, his voice so faint she almost missed it over the engine noise. "But Mommy's gone now." Something sharp twisted in Tasha's chest. "I know, sweetheart, I know." The hospital was only 6 blocks away now, but 6 blocks might as well have been 600 miles. Oliver's breathing was becoming more erratic, and she could see the panic in his eyes. The same panic she'd seen 2 years ago in a different pair of green eyes that belonged to a different little boy who she'd failed to save. "Not again," she whispered fiercely. "Not again." The Lamborghini's speedometer hit 90 as she flew down Fifth Avenue, emergency flashers blazing, horn blaring continuously. Pedestrians scattered, other cars swerved, and somewhere in the distance, she could hear sirens beginning to wail. St. Mary's Hospital appeared ahead, its emergency entrance lit up like a beacon. The security gate was down, a flimsy barrier designed to keep out everyday problems, not desperate mothers driving stolen supercars. Tasha didn't slow down. The impact was tremendous. The security gate exploded in a shower of plastic and metal, the Lamborghini's carbon fiber front bumper cracking but holding. The car slid sideways before coming to rest mere inches from the hospital's sliding glass doors, steam rising from the damaged hood. "Help!" Tasha screamed, bursting from the driver's seat with Oliver in her arms. "Help us!" The emergency room erupted into controlled chaos. Nurses appeared from nowhere, a gurney materialized, and suddenly Oliver was surrounded by people who knew what they were doing. "6-year-old male, anaphylactic shock," one of the nurses called out as they rushed toward the trauma bay. "Get me an EpiPen and start an IV, now." Tasha tried to follow, but a security guard gently caught her arm. "Ma'am, you need to—" "Is he going to be okay?" she shouted over the commotion. "Please, just tell me he's going to be okay." But before anyone could answer, the emergency room doors burst open again, and Marcus Blackstone stormed in with 2 police officers flanking him. His face was a mask of fury and disbelief, his silver hair wild from running. "There she is!" He pointed at Tasha with a trembling finger. "She stole my car! She kidnapped my son!" The police officers moved toward Tasha, hands resting on their handcuffs. She didn't resist as they pulled her arms behind her back. All she could focus on was the trauma bay where Oliver was fighting for his life. "Is the boy okay?" she asked the officers as the cold metal clicked around her wrists. Tears streamed down her face, but her voice was steady. "Did he make it? Please, someone has to tell me if he made it." One of the officers, a middle-aged black man with kind eyes, looked toward the trauma bay where the medical team was still working. "Ma'am, I can't—" Epinephrine is working, a voice called from the trauma bay. Blood pressure is stabilizing. Tasha's knees nearly buckled with relief. The officer steadied her as Marcus Blackstone approached, his face still twisted with rage. "You stole my car," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You could have killed someone driving like that. You could have killed my son." Tasha looked up at him through her tears, and for the first time since this all began, her voice carried an edge of steel. "Your son was already dying, Mr. Blackstone, and you were too busy on the phone to notice. Would you have done what Tasha did? Drop a yes or no in the comments. And if her courage moved you, hit that like button. It helps us share stories that matter." The Manhattan courthouse buzzed with media attention 3 days later. The story had exploded across social media. Black waitress steals Lamborghini in alleged kidnapping attempt. The headlines painted Tasha as everything from a hero to a criminal, with very little middle ground. Tasha sat in the defendant's chair wearing her one good dress, the same navy blue one she wore to job interviews and church, with a court-appointed lawyer who looked barely old enough to vote. Across the aisle, Marcus Blackstone's legal team occupied an entire row, their collective hourly rate probably exceeding her annual salary. "Your Honor," the prosecutor began, "the state will show that the defendant, Tasha Williams, committed grand theft auto when she stole Mr. Blackstone's vehicle valued at over $300,000. Her actions, while perhaps well-intentioned, were nevertheless criminal and dangerous." Judge Patricia Morrison, a stern woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, looked unconvinced. "Mr. Stevens, I've read the police reports. The child was in medical distress." "Yes, Your Honor, but there were legal alternatives." "Like what?" Judge Morrison interrupted. "Waiting for an ambulance while the child went into respiratory failure?" The prosecutor's confidence wavered. The defendant had no medical training to assess the severity. "Objection!" Tasha's young lawyer stood up, his voice cracking slightly. "The defense will present evidence that Ms. Williams' actions directly saved the child's life." That's when everything changed. Dr. Sarah Chen, the emergency room physician who had treated Oliver, took the stand with quiet authority. She was small and serious, with the kind of tired eyes that came from years of saving lives. "Doctor," Tasha's lawyer asked, "in your medical opinion, what would have happened if Oliver Blackstone had not received immediate treatment?" Dr. Chen looked directly at Marcus Blackstone as she answered. "He would have died. Anaphylactic shock is fatal without immediate intervention. Based on the timeline and the severity of his reaction, I estimate he had less than 10 minutes before complete respiratory failure." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Marcus Blackstone sat perfectly still, his face pale. "How long would it have taken for an ambulance to reach the restaurant and transport the child to your hospital?" "Given Manhattan traffic and the time of evening, 15 to 20 minutes minimum." The math was simple, brutal, and undeniable. "Your Honor," Dr. Chen continued without being asked, "I've been practicing emergency medicine for 12 years. I've never seen anyone act with such quick thinking and determination to save a child's life. She doesn't deserve to be prosecuted. She deserves a medal." The courtroom fell silent except for the sound of cameras clicking and phones recording. Marcus Blackstone stared at his hands, his expensive legal team suddenly looking very uncomfortable. Judge Morrison called for a recess, but the damage, or perhaps the healing, was already done. During the break, Tasha found herself in a small conference room with her lawyer, picking at a stale sandwich from the courthouse vending machine. Through the thin walls, she could hear the media circus outside, reporters asking anyone who would listen whether she was a hero or a criminal. "The prosecution is talking about dropping the charges," her lawyer said, barely containing his excitement. "Dr. Chen's testimony was devastating. No jury would convict you now." But Tasha wasn't listening. She was staring out the small window at the city skyline, thinking about a different courthouse, a different judgment from 2 years ago. "Ms. Williams?" A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Someone wants to see you." Marcus Blackstone stood in the hallway, but he looked nothing like the furious man who had stormed into the emergency room. His perfectly pressed suit was wrinkled, his silver hair disheveled, and his eyes carried a weight that hadn't been there before. "Could we talk?" he asked quietly. Please? They found privacy in an empty witness room, sitting across from each other at a scarred wooden table that had probably hosted thousands of difficult conversations. For a long moment, neither spoke. "How's Oliver?" Tasha asked finally. "He's fine. He's home with his nanny, asking when he can see the nice lady who drove the fast car." Marcus's voice was hoarse. "The doctors say there won't be any lasting effects." "Good." Tasha's hands were folded in her lap, steady despite everything. "That's good." Marcus looked at her, really looked at her for what felt like the first time. "Why did you do it?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications neither of them was quite ready to address. "Because," Tasha said slowly, "2 years ago, I had a son. His name was Joel." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "He was 5 years old and he loved dinosaurs and ice cream and bedtime stories." Marcus Blackstone went very still. "One day he started having trouble breathing after dinner. I thought it was just a cold, maybe allergies. I waited. I gave him some children's medicine and put him to bed thinking it would pass." Her voice was steady, matter of fact, as if she were reciting someone else's story. "He died in his sleep that night. Asthma attack. If I had acted faster, if I had trusted my instincts instead of second-guessing myself." The silence stretched between them, filled with understanding that came too late for one child, but just in time for another. "I'm sorry," Marcus whispered. "I'm so sorry. When I saw Oliver struggling to breathe, when I saw you dismissing his symptoms the same way I dismissed Joel's." Tasha finally looked up, meeting his eyes. "I couldn't let it happen again. I couldn't watch another mother lose her child because someone was too afraid to act." Marcus's carefully constructed world, the one built on control and distance and the belief that money could solve any problem, crumbled completely. "You saved my son." "Yes," Tasha said simply. "I did. And I tried to have you arrested for it." "Yes," she said again without accusation or bitterness. "You did." Marcus Blackstone, who had built an empire by always knowing what to say next, found himself speechless. If this story is opening your heart, share it. Someone out there needs to hear this. 1 month later, the morning sun streamed through the windows of Le Bernardin, casting the same dancing shadows across the marble floor where this story had begun. Tasha Williams was back at work. The charges had been dropped, and the restaurant had quietly asked her to return after the media attention brought them more positive coverage than their publicist had ever managed. She was refilling water glasses at table 12 when she saw him walk in. Marcus Blackstone looked different, older somehow, but also more alive. He wasn't carrying his phone, wasn't wearing his usual mask of barely contained impatience. He walked straight to Tasha's section and sat at a small table by the window. "Mr. Blackstone," she said carefully, "I didn't expect to see you back here." "I was hoping we could talk," he said. "If you have a minute." Tasha glanced around the restaurant. The lunch rush was still an hour away, and her manager was nowhere in sight. She sat across from him, just as she had in the courthouse conference room. "I sold the car," Marcus said without preamble. "The Lamborghini. Got a good price for it, even with the damage." Tasha raised an eyebrow. "Congratulations?" "I used the money to start something," he continued, pulling out a manila folder. "I wanted to show you." The folder contained legal documents, incorporation papers, and a mission statement. At the top of the first page, in elegant script, was a name that made Tasha's breath catch: the Joel Williams Foundation. "It's named after your son," Marcus explained quickly, as if afraid she might object. "I hope that's okay. The foundation focuses on food allergy awareness and education, particularly in underserved communities. We're working with schools, restaurants, hospitals, anywhere children might be at risk." Tasha's hands trembled slightly as she read through the documents. The Foundation's mission statement talked about early intervention, community education, and ensuring that no child died from preventable allergic reactions. It was exactly what she would have created if she'd had the resources. "This is—" she started, then stopped, overwhelmed. "It's not enough," Marcus said quietly. Nothing can bring back your son. Nothing can erase the fact that I almost let Pride and Prejudice cost me mine. But it's a start. Through the restaurant's front windows, Tasha could see a small figure pressed against the glass, Oliver, his face bright with excitement as he waved at her. Behind him stood a woman who could only be his nanny, smiling indulgently at the boy's enthusiasm. "He wanted to come see you," Marcus explained. "He's been asking about the fast car lady every day since the hospital." Tasha waved back, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. "There's something else," Marcus continued. "The foundation needs a director, someone who understands what we're trying to accomplish, someone who has the passion and experience to make it work." He looked directly at her. "The salary is substantial, enough to make sure you never have to worry about rent or groceries or any of the things that keep people up at night." "Mr. Blackstone—" "Marcus, please." "Marcus," she corrected. "I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I can't accept charity." "It's not charity," he interrupted. "It's justice. You saved my son's life, and I tried to destroy yours. This foundation, it's not about making me feel better. It's about making sure other parents don't go through what you went through, what I almost went through." Oliver had managed to convince his nanny to bring him inside. He ran straight to Tasha, his small arms wrapping around her waist in an enthusiastic hug. "Miss Tasha! Daddy says you're going to help keep other kids safe from the bad foods." Tasha looked down at his bright green eyes, so different from Marcus's dark brown ones, so full of life and possibility, and felt something shift inside her chest. It was the first time in 2 years that hope and grief occupied the same space without one destroying the other. "Maybe I am, sweetheart," she said, kneeling to his level. "Maybe I am." The restaurant fell silent as other diners became aware of the reunion taking place at the small table by the window. Some recognized them from the news coverage. Others simply sensed they were witnessing something significant. Even the waitstaff had stopped their preparations to watch. Marcus stood, extending his hand to Tasha. When she took it, he didn't shake it. He held it, the way you hold something precious and fragile. "You gave me my son back," he said, loud enough for the entire restaurant to hear. "You didn't just save his life. You saved mine, and I will spend the rest of my life making sure the world knows what kind of person you are." The applause started slowly, a single pair of hands clapping somewhere in the back of the restaurant. Then another joined in, and another, until the entire dining room was erupting in thunderous appreciation. Waiters and busboys emerged from the kitchen, diners stood from their tables, and even the stern maitre d' who had hired Tasha 3 years ago was wiping tears from her eyes. But Tasha barely heard it. All she could focus on was Oliver's small hand in hers, and the way the sunlight streaming through the windows seemed brighter than it had in months. "There's one more thing," Marcus said as the applause died down. "The Foundation's first initiative. We're calling it the Guardian Angel Program. It will train restaurant staff, teachers, coaches, anyone who works with children to recognize and respond to medical emergencies." He pulled out another document, this one bearing official letterheads and government seals. "We've partnered with the Department of Health to make it part of standard certification requirements. No child will ever go unnoticed again." Tasha read the document twice, her eyes burning with unshed tears. At the bottom, in small print, was a dedication. "In memory of Joel Williams, age 5, and in honor of all the children whose guardians refused to look away." "How did you know about the guardian angel thing?" she whispered. Marcus's smile was soft, almost sad. "Oliver told me. He said that's what you were, his guardian angel who drove the fast car. And I realized he was right. Some angels wear wings and halos. Others wear aprons and drive stolen Lamborghinis." Oliver tugged at Tasha's sleeve. "Miss Tasha, are you crying?" She knelt beside him again, brushing away the tears she hadn't realized were falling. "Sometimes people cry when they're happy, sweetheart. These are happy tears." "Good," Oliver said seriously, "because sad tears are the worst. Daddy cries sad tears sometimes when he thinks I'm asleep." Marcus's face reddened slightly, but he didn't deny it. "Oliver, why don't you tell Miss Tasha about your new medical alert bracelet?" Oliver held out his wrist proudly, showing off a bright red bracelet with white lettering. It says I'm allergic to nuts, and it has Daddy's phone number and the hospital's number, and even Miss Tasha's number. My number? Tasha looked at Marcus in surprise. I hope that's okay, he said quickly. I wanted to make sure that if anything ever happened again, you'd know. You'd be contacted immediately. It was such a small thing, a phone number on a medical alert bracelet, but it carried the weight of absolute trust. Marcus Blackstone, who had once accused her of kidnapping, now considered her part of his son's emergency contact network. It's more than okay, Tasha said. It's perfect. As they prepared to leave the restaurant, Marcus turned back one final time. The dining room had returned to its usual sophisticated hum, but there was something different in the air, a warmth that hadn't been there before, a sense that something important had shifted in the world. Tasha, he said, I need you to know something. The day this happened, I saw a black woman stealing my car. I saw a criminal, a threat, someone to be feared and punished. I didn't see you. I didn't see a mother who had lost her child, a woman who was willing to risk everything to save a stranger's son. I saw what I expected to see, not what was actually there. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I can't undo that. I can't take back the fact that my first instinct was to call the police instead of thanking you. But I can promise you this. I will never make that mistake again. And more importantly, I'll spend the rest of my life making sure other people don't make it either. Tasha nodded, understanding passing between them that went beyond words. As they walked toward the exit, Oliver's small hand firmly clasped in both of theirs, the late afternoon sun painted the restaurant's marble floors in shades of gold. Outside, the city hummed with its usual energy, millions of people living their separate lives, most of them unaware that a small miracle had just taken place over lunch. But for 3 people walking out of an expensive restaurant, the world had fundamentally changed. A son had been saved, a father had been humbled, and a mother had found a way to honor her lost child by protecting others. Sometimes heroes don't wear capes. Sometimes they wear aprons and drive stolen cars and save lives with nothing more than courage and the refusal to look away when it matters most. And sometimes, the very people society overlooks are the ones who end up saving it. The Joel Williams Foundation would go on to save hundreds of children's lives, training thousands of adults to recognize the signs of anaphylaxis and other medical emergencies. Oliver Blackstone would grow up to become a pediatric allergist, inspired by the woman who had once stolen a car to save his life, and Tasha Williams would find her purpose in making sure no other parent would ever have to experience the grief she carried. But that afternoon, as they walked out of Le Bernardin together, none of them were thinking about the future. They were simply grateful for the present, for second chances, for guardian angels who drive fast cars, and for the extraordinary things that can happen when one person refuses to let another's child die on their watch. The stolen Lamborghini was gone, sold to fund a foundation built on love and loss. But the impact of that desperate drive through Manhattan traffic would ripple outward for generations, touching lives that would never know they had been saved by a waitress who chose courage over caution, love over fear, and action over silence. In the end, that's what heroes do. They act when others hesitate. They see children instead of strangers. They steal cars if they have to, and they never ever look away when someone needs saving. And if the world is very lucky, sometimes they get the recognition they deserve, not just for what they did, but for who they are. If this story made you feel something, anything, hit that like button. Share it with someone who still believes in humanity. And don't forget to subscribe for more true stories that touch the soul.